Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN Weekly for Saturday, August 22nd, 2020. And our top story today, retirement savers' mindset on their long-term financial and retirement security. And joining me now to discuss this and more is Catherine Galladay. She's an Executive Vice President with Charles Schwab. Catherine, thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. I hope everything's going well for you and the Charles Schwab team. And, I want to jump right in because you all just released a very important survey of over 1,000 participants. What are some of the key takeaways here? Because I think Americans, my sense is they're feeling very stressed right now.
They are, and that was one of the things that we definitely saw in the survey. We typically ask people, what are the top sources of financial stress that you have? And saving for retirement is typically one of the top financial stresses. It certainly was this year, and trending up from prior years. Other things that we saw when we talk about financial stress, market volatility was concerning for folks, as was job security. And that's probably not a surprise in this environment, in these unusual times. But saving for retirement, it's on folks' minds, and it's definitely one of their top sources of financial stress.
Well, I understand. So let's separate issues for a second. I'm glad, as a former retirement professional, that people are thinking about retirement. And I think it's horrible. Mental health is certainly important, especially when we're isolated. We're not going to work primarily. So I'm elated that people are thinking about this, but I'm really concern about the mental aspects of this, because no employer wants to have their employee be under mental stress when it comes to finance.
You are so right. And absolutely think about what all of us are going through right now. You're trying to balance things that are right in front of you. Financial concerns that you might have completely outside of planning for retirement. You might have health concerns. And you're trying to keep that balance of taking care of yourself and your family in the short term and then planning for the long term. You mentioned employers. I think that's a really great point. We work with, of course, both individuals and employers. And I think employers, companies can be really helpful to their employees right now. Think about the kinds of tools or resources or financial planning and wellness resources that could be available to employees. I think that goes a long way to really helping people with that confidence level during times where I'm sure, just given what's going on, that confidence level is going to ebb and flow. So employers can play an important role there, I think.
Yeah, and I think they're doing a lot more. You mentioned the financial wellness. It's a word that we throw around a lot within the industry, but it really means a lot of things. Very holistic approach. We're not just talking about retirement anymore, are we, Catherine? We're really pulling together things like student loans, saving for retirement, buying the home, doing all these other parts within our lives, and it all kind of fits together.
Right. Because think about it. I have worked in this industry a long time, but it's always good to just remind myself, individuals don't think of their 401k in a vacuum. They don't, compartmentalize. It's one part of the bigger financial picture. And to the extent that we can help and their employer can help put retirement planning in that context, we find that it's been very helpful just for employees to have a good view on planning for the long term, but also helping to make those trade-off decisions that you talked about. What do I do first in the face of competing priorities like saving for retirement or paying down student debt or participating in my HSA account? So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I took away from the survey was the fact that people believe that they now need $1.9 million. So it used to be, when I first got into the industry many, many moons ago when I had hair, that you needed $1 million. But it seems like, and I don't know if this is a reflection of the pandemic or if this is just negativity or inflation or what. What can you tell us about that? Because it's certainly grown over time.
Yeah, there's probably a little bit of all those factors playing into that. The 1.9 million, that was an increase from last year of about 12%. And if you dig into that, you'll see generational differences as well. The millennials and the folks in the Gen X, their number was actually closer to $2 million. And the baby boomers scaled back a little bit at 1.6 million. So it's probably a combination of factors. I do imagine that the pandemic has played into it to some extent, at least. And in fact, one of the findings was in terms of, tell us about your timeline for retirement. We saw that 1 in 5 individuals said, you know what, I'm going to retire later than I originally planned as a result just of everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, and you see that. I mean, and we saw this in 2008 where people had to take a step back and maybe extend their opportunities for work and do what they can to make up the loss. But, you know, obviously disconcerting to a lot of people who have this vision for retirement. Catherine, you know, we've been focused as an industry on the CARES Act, but a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, we were focused on the Secure Act. And part of the Secure Act was retirement income and focus on retirement income and retirement annuities. Any thoughts there from participants? And you mentioned the 1.9 million, but any thoughts about, hey, what does that actually mean in terms of monthly income to me 20, 30 years into retirement? Any thoughts about that?
Right. Retirement income, a very, very important topic for our industry. We've spent many years working with individuals and as an industry to help people accumulate. And it's so important that we help them try to paint a picture of what that could look like in retirement. One of the things that I think is really interesting, and it's actually, I think, one of the bright spots in the survey, is the level of engagement that we see with participants and acting with their plan. One of the things that we've seen is individuals, participants, taking advantage to a greater extent of advice and guidance within their 401k plan. I mention that because that kind of professional 401k advice, it can answer a couple really key questions for you. It can answer the question of how much am I supposed to save? Where should I invest that? And then what you just mentioned, what is that going to equate to in retirement? It's one thing to think about the big number, the 1.9 million. I think it's much more helpful when you can create a plan for yourself that translates that into what is my retirement paycheck going to look like, and how might I be able to, to budget and work through retirement.
Yeah, it's always about framing rather than just throwing out numbers. Catherine, always a pleasure chatting with you. Really interesting survey. Thank you so much, and we look forward to having you back on the program really soon.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. And when we come back, we'll take a look at some of our best segments for the week. So stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
If you were like 58% of Americans, you didn't go to college. Or you did, but never finished. Maybe it's the thought of a big, intimidating campus. At Independence University, all classes are held online. Maybe it's the thought of being alone in a sea of students. At Independence U, you'll get a personal support team to help you every step of the way. Maybe it's the cost of all those books and supplies. Online means no books to buy. We even give you a new laptop and tablet to keep when you graduate. Maybe your life doesn't fit typical college classes. At Independence U, our online college fits your schedule. Let's meet a few students.
Independence University held my hand through the process.
Don't be afraid to take the leap because it has changed my life drastically.
Just take the first step and you can do it. If I did it, you can do it too.
At IU, there's no barriers to your degree.
800-535-9916.
Welcome back. On Wednesday, I sat down with CalSavers' Katie Solinsky to talk about employer and employee engagement during the pandemic. Let's take a look.
So we have, in general, we think about outreach as in two buckets. One, the employer outreach, which we've discussed a little bit, and then the saver outreach. And really we partner not only with our formal business partners, a census and others on that, but with our many, many wonderful stakeholder partners in the state on outreach to savers. So we have a very robust field outreach team here in Sacramento, who is very, very busy doing webinars. Previously, we were out there traveling the road all the time, talking to consumer groups, labor-oriented organizations, community organizations to get the word out, because we know that the best way to get the word out is through trusted influencers, so that people, whether they're employers or workers, hear about the program through their trusted influencers, people they already admire and listen to on other things. So that kind of field outreach program has transitioned to online. And really, you mentioned this earlier, Jeff, but we think that this crisis has really underscored the need and shined a light on the need for people to have short and long-term savings, and a way to do that really, really easily. So we are really proud that CalSavers meets both of those needs because of the structure, the Roth IRA structure. People do have access to their contributions, tax and penalty free, if they may need them. And of course, we don't want people to access their long-term savings and the investments if they can avoid it. But we know that we're talking to a group of savers who are, in many cases, first-time savers, first-time investors. Again, I mentioned the 25 to 30,000 median income. So, we're trying to adjust our messaging to really highlight, now more than ever, CalSavers is important for employers. It's important for you as part of your recovery plan and being a competitive, employer out there in the economy. For savers, we need financial resilience in the short and long term, and CalSavers is here to make it really easy for you to set it and forget it. People are still saving. We have actually quadrupled the number of funded accounts since February, believe it or not. And what we found is that if people are still working, they're still saving. And we've seen that if they're still working and they are presented, if their employer gets kind of onboarded and registered with CalSavers and they have the opportunity, they're sticking with the program. Again, we have that 70% participation rate. So we have thousands of new funded accounts coming on board, every week. It's really exciting. We also have been surprised to see that the withdrawal rate has not been anywhere near what we thought it would be. In January, February, March, I was personally, bracing myself for some pretty substantial withdrawals. And, it did go up a bit earlier in the pandemic and the shutdown, but it really then leveled out. By May, it leveled out to, actually lower than pre-COVID levels. And it's starting to inch back up again, but it's still much, much lower than we might have thought when we were staring down, a huge recession here and unemployment rates, being where they are. So, I think it speaks to the strength and the power of the structure that we've designed here. It's a really simple, easy financial product. People can get in and out whenever they want. And it really, is designed to work for working people who historically not had access. So just really delighted to see the rates of participation staying where they are. It's so proud to be colleagues and partners with Illinois and Oregon on this. It's all of our leaders in our states, treasurers, the boards that we serve, we're pioneers really in setting out to establish these programs. And we are proud that we're really proving that it works. It's simple, it works. When you give people access and make it easy, they will save. And then we have all kinds of kind of informal and formal mechanisms to talk it with the quote pipeline states. So those states who have already passed legislation but are pre-implementation, as well as those states who are in the legislative phase. So, it's incredible. I've been, very grateful to have the insights from my friends in Oregon and Illinois who are, a step ahead of us on the implementation side. That's been incredibly valuable for me. It's really great to not be the very first out of the gate. And then, I try to pay that forward and help our pipeline states as much as possible, because we're all trying to serve the same mission and get access for folks who have been underserved historically.
And on Tuesday, I sat down with the Motley Fool's Daniel Klein to discuss the surge in online trading and what it all means. Let's take a look.
So trading is a bad thing. Trading is playing roulette. If you invest and buy and hold in good companies, history says you will make money. The stock market goes up in the long term. We've looked at our portfolios across the entire Motley Fool and have recognized that if we never sold, literally even just never sold stocks we knew did terribly and weren't going to come back, we'd actually be in a better position than the limited amount of selling we do. So mostly we issue buy recommendations. We very rarely issue a sell recommendation. Now that said, occasionally something goes wrong with the stock and we'll tell you, yep, we're giving up on this one. Luckin Coffee would be a good example. They had some accounting fraud and we recommended it in a couple of places, and in most of them we came back and said, nobody could have seen this coming, but cut your losses, get out of it. People who are trading are basically saying, okay, I think that this stock that I'm going to buy on Monday, by Monday afternoon, it's going to go up, it's going to go down. That's gambling. You're guessing. A lot of people right now are asking about Tesla stock. Should I buy Tesla stock because it's about to split 5-for-1? We've talked about this before. A split is cosmetic. It's just cutting your pizza into more slices. It doesn't change how much pizza you have. That said, Tesla stock was up 12% yesterday and it's up 4% today, but there's no guarantee that it won't be down 20% tomorrow. Nobody is smarter than the market. Jim Cramer isn't smarter than the market. If you want to make money in stocks, buy companies you believe in and hold them. Now, can 5% of your portfolio be speculative? Sure, if you want to own, a cannabis company like Planet 13, which is a company I really believe in, I think they're going to do well, but they're a very small company. But if you want that to be a small percentage of your portfolio, yeah, it has the potential to do really well in the long term. One of the things we try to discourage on our platform is people who ask, why did this and this go up or down today? Now, if there's a reason for it, we'll write a story. If something changed, management made a decision, earnings were below, we'll explain it to you. But if it doesn't change our investment thesis about the company, it's effectively meaningless. The other big negative on Robinhood, and I don't mean to pick on the platform because there's nothing wrong. It's an easily accessible, platform for investors as well. But they also offer margin accounts. Margin accounts lets you trade with money that's not yours, and if the stock goes down, they will ask you to cover that margin, meaning you either have to sell the stock or you have to give them money. That is a bad situation. They also allow unskilled traders to trade in options. We recommend, it's one of the basic tenets of our investing platform, don't trade options for a year. I would actually argue that unless you are paying for something like our option service, where you're really learning how to use options, or you go to school, there's lots of books on how to trade options. You don't have to pay for one of our services. You go to the library and pick up a book on it. Options can be dangerous. It's a way to lose money. We tell people, just don't trade options for a year. Learn what you're doing. Look, I don't trade options. I buy shares in companies like Microsoft that I believe in that are going to be, slowly growing over the next 20 years before, I in theory retire. I'm never going to retire. But that said, a lot of young people, they're using this like sports betting And that is a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea no matter what your age is, frankly. So here's what you're getting. You're getting pump and dump schemes, and that's a problem. So if somebody comes into a group, and we have this problem in our unofficial Facebook groups, we can't clean it up as fast as it happens. Somebody comes in and they says, oh, you should buy Nikola. Nikola is a Chinese electric vehicle company that has no orders and no products. I mean, they have theoretical orders, but they're very small deposits and they're cancelable. It's a pre-revenue company. It's an idea on a piece of paper. So trading in that is, of course, incredibly speculative. But if somebody comes in and they can get enough people excited about it, they will tell you to get excited. They won't tell you that they're going to sell out of it before some actual news comes out. It's a company that had $38,000 in revenue. All of that revenue came from doing some work for its CEO. It's a zero revenue company. There's a ton of companies out there like this. Not saying, again, if you truly believe in one, you can't invest a small amount. You know, the other thing you see on platforms like Robinhood, I don't mean to pick on Robinhood, is you'll see people say things like, well, airlines are really low. They can't possibly go any lower, and we're not going to get rid of airlines. Here's the reality. We've had 40-something airline bankruptcies in the last 20 years in the United States. Airlines can go bankrupt. You know what happens when they go bankrupt? You lose your equity. The airline still flies. The CEO probably keeps his job. The bondholders get paid some portion of what they're owed. The vendors get paid what they're owed. You know who goes away? The shareholder. People were trading bankrupt JCPenney and Hertz stock, trying to bid it up so they could sucker other people. Don't be one of those people. Don't play that game. It's a terrible idea. So the individual has a lot of responsibility. And it's something I talk a lot about on our live platform and on Motley Fool podcasts. So I'm a writer for Motley Fool. I have opinion on stocks. They're well-informed opinions, but I'm not a stock analyst. The people who are on our stock analyst teams, my colleague Emily Flippen, who runs our Marijuana Masters service, she spends the vast majority of her day researching cannabis stocks or cannabis-adjacent stocks, because most of that portfolio is not cannabis pure plays. It's companies that touch on that industry. So her opinion on those stocks, I don't want to say it means more than mine, but it kind of does. And there are a lot of things on our platform. There are Fool.com writers that are younger and newer. So I say, one, don't act on any one person's opinion. Now, I would look at the track record of something like a Motley Fool stock advisor, where we show you the last 20 years or however long the service has been around of history, and we say, hey, here's how it's beat the market. Here's how each individual stock is done. Well, that's a lot more valuable than you can look in our service called Caps, where if I make a recommendation on something, I have to thumb it up or thumb it down in caps. And you could say, okay, Dan's right about 70% of the time. He's doing pretty well. Dan on Tip Ranks, which is a third-party company that compiles what various financial writers are their recommendations. Oh wow, Dan's in the top 100 out of like 10,000 in terms of advice. That gives you some credibility, but it doesn't mean I'm right. And in terms of like starting your research, I view it like movie reviews. So if you're watching a movie review show and you tend to always agree with someone, when you go see the movies they liked, they're the movies you like, well, that's a good place to start. So if you like the stocks I'm talking about, well, then go do real research. Go read an earnings report. Join a service like Motley Fool. And we are by no means the only credible one out there. Join credible services with long-term track records and say, oh, wow, Dan likes it. I like Dan. It's also recommended by David Gardner in Rule Breakers. And wow, his track record is really impressive. Hey, and these three other writers I follow are, that are professional writers, not people who are, trying to pump up the price of the stock. Really do your homework. It's very important. Or don't buy stocks at all. Buy ETFs. If you just bought the NASDAQ, you'd be doing pretty well right now. Or if you believe software as a service, which has done incredibly well, is going to do well, go out and buy an ETF that tracks software as a service. Worry about if there, the fees involved and other things, but there's no rule saying you have to buy individual stocks.
Well, great shows, great segments all around. I want to thank all of our great contributors this week. And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. Don't forget, we're back again tomorrow with the BRN Sunday podcast. I'll be joined by members of the media, academia, and financial services to break down all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and so much more during the week. You're going to want to check out this episode. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.